I've been very sympathetic to people down under in Australia and New Zealand. I know we have a fair few viewers that always ask us to cover this, and I've decided now that it's finally the time to do so, because it's just absolutely insane what's going on in Australia and New Zealand in reaction to COVID. Like even our press, which have kind of forced lockdowns on us, are making fun of the reactions there. And I mean, our government's been relatively totalitarian about the whole thing, keeping us locked up over nothing when most of the population is vaccinated. So the thing I really wanted to focus on here is that New Zealand has entered a nationwide lockdown over one case. One case in the entire country. I really don't understand what on earth they are thinking.
I presume the one case is in the capital, like some shipping container came in and someone was ill. And therefore, both islands have to be locked down?
Yeah, because of course, if you don't know, New Zealand's split into 2 islands. So you've got a natural defence right there. But no, nationwide lockdown.
Like, just imagine being on the South Island and you're like, we're literally an island away. And we've got to lock down because someone in the capital got sick. Right.
COVID's really determined. It will cross an entire ocean to get you.
Well, I think it's an ocean between the islands, but...
yeah, well.
Body of water.
It depends on your definition.
Sure.
So the case was detected in Auckland, which will be in lockdown for an entire week, whilst the rest of the country will be on lockdown for 3 days for some reason. Just a 3-day lockdown, just a snap lockdown. Entire country for 3 days. One case.
Oh, God.
What are they thinking? Like, it's not
this
even...
happened in Australia as well, didn't it?
Yeah, I'll be getting onto Australia in a second. So, of course, only around 20% of the population is fully vaccinated, because it's not quite as far along in its vaccination programme, but also the kind of Australasian area has been relatively unaffected by the pandemic in terms of...
Yeah, it's very isolated.
Yeah, they don't have nearly the same numbers of people dying that you had in the UK, for example. We've had more people dying in a single day than they've had in the entire pandemic from start to finish.
Because we're not an isolated country.
No, well...
We're interwoven into the global...
and we're also the most densely populated country in Europe, so probably doesn't help.
But there's a thing as well, which is if they got 20% vaccinated, that's going to be the elderly, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
So the people at high risk are all vaccinated.
People who are vulnerable, yeah.
Right.
So the actual case was in Coromandel, which is a coastal town. Might have been a port, as you suggested. Well deduced.
To be honest,
where
I'm
an
half
infected person had
expecting it to be a
visited.
false positive at this point.
Well, it's just like a test error.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me, actually. I mean, I don't know. There's no mention of them having any symptoms or anything. It's just that someone has tested positive. So it could actually be that they've locked down the entire country in response to a negative test. We don't know. I mean, it's probably not right to speculate.
Speculation on my part.
Of course. But the Prime Minister, Jackie Ardern, who is probably one of the worst leaders in the Western world, pally with China, open socialist, all-round awful person, said that the toughest level 4 rules were required for this one case, which includes things like closing schools, offices and businesses with only essential services remaining operational. So it's a proper lockdown. It's not just a half-arse one. They're doing the real thing where they're closing down their entire society for one case. And
I mean, if lockdowns weren't seen as disproportional yet, this has got to be the best example.
Yeah. I mean, what on earth are they thinking?
I mean, you'd probably lock down the sick person and anyone they've been in contact with, as any well-thinking country would.
Yeah.
But not the rest of the healthy people and those who have never been in contact with them.
It's like economic self-harm as well. They're just willfully destroying their own economy whilst taking ridiculous measures. So she justified it by saying, I want to assure New Zealand that we have planned for this eventuality. Going hard and early has worked for us before. So she's supposedly taking this tough approach to prevent it from getting out of hand. That's her justification. But locking down the entire country, one case. I know I'm going to keep on repeating it, but
it is so ridiculous.
It is absurd, yeah. So I'm going to move on to Australia, which has slightly more cases than one, but not by much, not by certainly European standards. So the state of New South Wales has reached its worst ever COVID situation which, by the way, locally transmitted infections hit about 466 on Saturday, and the state of New South Wales has a population of 8.166 million people, and there are 466 cases as of Saturday. Does that seem disproportionate to you? I think it does.
I'm pretty sure New South Wales has also done this multiple times now.
Yeah, I mean, Australia's also been ridiculously tyrannical. I've heard the people at Sky News Australia talking about how they're returning to their prison colony roots, which they certainly are. I don't understand what's going on. You're meant to be inheritors of kind of English liberalism, which cares about, you know, the rule of law and good things that we are in support of,
Well,
but no.
As you say, they're going back to their roots.
Well, apparently that goes stronger than the liberal strain running through them. So they've also decided to increase the fines for, up to 5,000 Australian dollars, up from 1,000 Australian dollars, which is the equivalent of 3,685 US dollars or 2,656 pounds. So ridiculous fines for breaking the rules as well.
What are the rules?
Well,
like what can you get fined $2,500 for?
Well, for example, people are not allowed to move further than 5 kilometres from their homes. And from the 21st of August, anyone wishing to travel from Greater Sydney to any other regions of New South Wales will need a permit, and anyone without a permit will be fined.
You got your licence to travel.
Yeah, you've got to get a travel licence. You're basically now serfs. You've got to get permission from your landowner to move around the country in which you're meant to be free to do what you want. Apparently not. So there's also other things that I've come across where there's going to be a 9 p.m. curfew in Melbourne, and New South Wales shopping, exercise and outdoor recreation, of course, has to close. There are, of course, only 22 cases in the state of Victoria, but this has also warranted the essential worker permits that have been expanded around the country.
Where they did before as well. Have you got your licence to work?
Yeah, it's absurd. And they've also set up things which are rather unflatteringly referred to as the COVID quarantine camps, which definitely doesn't have a negative connotation at all.
Wait, they called them that?
Well, that's what people are calling them in Australia.
Okay.
But they've been nicknamed health hotels. That's like their informal name. And when I was looking into these this morning, I found one which is being set up at the minute, which is called Melbourne Centre for National Resilience. That sounds like something from 1984, doesn't it? Oh, it's our Centre for National Resilience. Well, what does it do? Well, this is where we keep people isolated if they have a disease.
We imprison them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, national resilience, it sounds like it's straight from the CCP, not from the free Western world. What is going on here? So, people may have seen as well recently a video of a 12-year-old girl who was pepper sprayed. You can see here, it's not actually worth watching the video because it's just terrible filming. It's just people's torsos and screeching. So I've saved you the trouble of having to watch that.
If you're going to take footage of people being pepper sprayed, at least have the decency to hold your camera sideways and stay still.
Yeah, don't film vertically, for goodness sake. But no, this is something that I'd actually like to address because I have seen the full video, and as bad as it sounds, I don't think the police did anything wrong. I mean, they're enforcing the laws which they've been given. I understand the laws are unjust, and if you actually see the full video, these people are resisting arrest, trying to be violent when they're being arrested because they, of course, refused to give their details when they were confronted for not wearing a mask. They refused to cooperate with the police and then got aggressive, and then they're acting like the victims. So
I don't know, I kind of agree with the not giving the details and refusing to cooperate, but the thing we do in Britain, for example, in response to if it's an unjust law, is you just lay there. And they have to pick you up and carry you into the thing and be like, I'm not cooperating.
Yeah, but they were also violent towards the police.
Which I was about to say, the aggressive part, I agree, you should do that.
Yeah, so once they were put in handcuffs, they started trying to kick the police officers and push them and scratch them and all sorts of horrendous stuff. And then they're trying to put themselves out there as some kind of victim when in reality they really are not. And this is something that I would like to clear up, because when there are legitimate cases where people are being victimised, it it makes sense to draw attention to it, but this is one of those ones where I understand that I don't agree with the laws.
The reason they stopped them is bad, but the conduct in response was also bad.
Yeah, they don't do themselves any
Right.
favours by behaving in the way that they did. And I think lots of people are showing this as just like, look at how terrible these people are being treated.
Why did you have to use pepper spray on a 12-year-old, though? Surely you could just tuck her into the car.
I know. I mean, obviously some of the details of it, I mean, it's difficult to tell, especially with the filming, where it's all over the place. You can't really see what's going on. But I've seen enough where you can see them being violent towards the police officers, and you're like, well, fair enough.
Right.
So I don't really want
I
to
still
dwell
think
on
it's
that.
ridiculous, though. Like,
Yeah.
you're not wearing a mask, you're coming with us, sunshine. Like, what the hell is wrong with this place?
Supposedly,
Like, they're outside as well. Like, we remember being told endlessly, like, you don't have to wear a mask outside. Well,
I'm not defending the laws here. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it's overplayed. And I imagine I'm probably going to get some abuse for this, but fair enough. So, of course, the person who actually got arrested, the 20-year-old, who was the family member of the 12-year-old girl who was interfering with the police, had actually received a fine the day before for not wearing a mask, and then the next day got confronted for the same thing again when they were in a shop. They weren't wearing a mask, and then they were going to be issued with another fine, but they put up resistance, which is why it happened. So anyway, moving on to something a bit more amusing, I suppose, this isn't really related to Australasia whatsoever, but it's Scotland, but I just wanted to tie it in because it's COVID-related stuff, I suppose. So, it says, around 20 sovereign citizen activists, attempted to seize Edinburgh Castle today to restore common law, citing Article 61 of the Magna Carta. One of the activists told police officers that they had enough of fake acts and statutes, which he said were made up by paedophiles.
I love the copper who's wearing a mask and he's looking down at some piece of paper, and I love the idea that just on the piece of paper it says "F off nonce." The copper's just like, what? Proper North FC action right there, based.
I don't really know what they're getting at here, but it's amusing. So
I love the idea there are a bunch of barons as well, because the barons are the one who are meant to implement the statutes of the Magna Carta to restore English liberties. So.
I'll get onto the historical side of that in a second. Right. So this next post here gives a bit more detail. So apparently about 30 people have seized the castle. One said, "We are using Article 61 of the Magna Carta. We've had enough. The people of Scotland have had enough today. And we claim our powers back."
Just where's your mask, Sonny? F off nonce. British conversations. Glorious.
And also seizing a castle as well.
Yeah.
Just the humour of it.
Oh boy!
But yeah,
so I assume these are Scottish people storming it as well. So
yeah, but at least they're citing English common law as well.
Yeah,
so yeah, they're definitely not members of the Scottish National Party, are they? If they're citing the Magna Carta.
Based.
The BBC has also covered this, which I was quite surprised about. So the Historic Environment Scotland, which I assume are the people who run the castle. Presumably for tourists, said that a group of about 20 people entered the building on Tuesday afternoon without paying. Funny that they mentioned that. And
you don't usually pay when storming the castle. Can you imagine being at Constantinople and be like, well, the Turks aren't even paying to come in.
And apparently in a Facebook live video, a woman claimed that they were taking the castle back under Article 61 of the Magna Carta, and the BBC explains what this is. They say it is an 800-year-old Charter of Rights, which was a document where the barons came together, as you alluded to, in 1215, trying to get the King of England, King John, to agree to a royal charter, which meant that the barons would be afforded some specific rights.
Well, the English would be guaranteed these rights, and those rights are protected by the barons. So the king
that's a better way of putting it.
The king had been tyrannical, and the modern day example of this, so we'll run it through. So is the king being tyrannical at the time? They decided yes. The version of this would be Queen Elizabeth did sign the Coronavirus Act or whatever it is that allows the police to be tyrannical. Therefore, it is the job of the barons to restore English liberties by sitting the king down and be like, "Oi, we have rights, and we're bigger than you, and that's the right way to do it, according to the Magna Carta."
Storming Edinburgh Castle. I don't remember that part in the.
Yeah, I don't think the
Magna
Queen's
Carta.
in there. They need to get a Buckingham for that.
Maybe Windsor. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's the foundation of English common law, and it's not really very valid today. The Magna Carta doesn't really have any legal
Nah, it's still
powers.
No.
I mean, I respect it. I think it's important, but I don't think the Magna Carta has. It's not like an equivalent of the U.S. Constitution, and the article in which they're citing as well, Article 61, was actually repealed only a year after it was signed in 1216. So I really don't understand what they're trying to achieve here.
I don't know the specific article because I don't read Latin or anything, but the idea that it's not valid, I find big disagreement with. It's like, no, this is the foundation of all English common law, and therefore everything else is built upon it.
I think saying it's not valid is unfair, but it's not really an applicable legal document anymore. Like it's not consulted in a legal case. You don't go. Oh,
You mean if you went to court, it would be weird to bring it up? But
yes.
I don't know, because I remember there was the fines people got for being at train stations, for example. There was one lady who was fined, and on the fine it said, for being at a train station. And then she went to court and disputed it, along with hundreds of other people, because it was coronavirus fines. Everyone won. 100% of the people who went to court won.
But I think that was just because none of the actual fines were enforced. I don't think that was because...
No, they were given to them. They weren't legal. That was the point. The judges in each one of those cases were like, well, there's no legal basis for this being illegal, so go to hell. And all the fines were repealed. So...
Not sure it's the Magna Carta, but I wish it was.
Foundationally, yes. Anyway.
It's a bit of a tenuous argument. You could say that any kind of primitive law has influence on things being unlawful now.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's how England works. All of our laws are primitive.
You say that like it's a good thing.
Well, they're
we're
just
just
old.
talking about Afghanistan being backwards, and you're like, yeah, all our
I
laws
said
are
that
primitive.
primitive is in old, not primitive as in barbarian. So.
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.